Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. My name is Mike Hoffman, and I'm happy and honored to be serving as your worship associate today, along with our speaker, Meryl Cassidy. I'll be telling you more about Meryl in just a little while. Excuse me, I need to move this. Okay. Here we are. Our minister is the Reverend Madeline Campbell, and our Director of Religious Education is Deb Little. I want to offer a special welcome to any of you who are visiting us here for the first time today. We're delighted to have you here with us, and we look forward to getting to know you a little better. Please plan to stay following the service and join us as our guests for coffee hour, where you'll find lots of friendly folks to answer any questions you may have. Now, here are several important announcements. Please silence any phones or other electronic devices you may have. This would be a good time to do that. Number two, the board has decided, since Suffolk County has been at low risk for COVID transmission for several weeks now, that masks are no longer required and are optional for our services, as we can see. Of course, if you're sick or having symptoms, please stay home to avoid spreading infection. Number three, as you may have heard, the theme for our summer services will be Long Island, and we'll be looking at this unique piece of geography from many angles: physical, social, political, and whatever moves you about our island. We're looking for you to consider leading a service this summer, either on your own or in collaboration with Pastor Madeline. Please consider submitting a short proposal to the worship associates by March 31st, and see the newsletter for more details. Number four, as we build our beloved community on Long Island, where hate is replaced by respect for all peoples and faiths, Abraham's Table invites you to worship at one of 20 religious services different from your own during the weekends of March 17th to 19th or March 24th to 26th. As part of this effort, our UU Fellowship is opening our doors to visitors on March 26th. For more information, please see Deb Little or Pastor Madeline for details. Finally, let's continue to write the story of UUFSB. On Sunday, April 2nd, from 12:15 to 2:15 in the Yellow Room, come join us after services to help continue to build and elaborate on our UUFSB timeline. You're welcome to bring photos and other memories. New members are welcome as well. For information, you can see Judd Kramarczyk or Karen Posey. Karen, are you here? Okay. Judd's here. Okay. And now we will hear a stewardship moment from our own Amy Hammock. Amy?
Hi, everyone. As Michael said, my name is Amy Hammock, and I've been invited to speak about why the fellowship is important to me and why I'm committed to supporting the fellowship financially. It's fitting that the theme of the stewardship campaign this year is sowing the seeds of our future, because one of the main things that brought me to UUFSB was wanting my children to have a strong ethical foundation to grow and thrive. My partner Jamie and I came to the fellowship for the first time when our daughter, Rose, who's now 15, was just a baby. We were immediately drawn to the principles of the Unitarian Universalist faith and to the warm community that upholds these values through action for social justice. We became members about 10 years ago and feel so fortunate that our children are able to grow up in this loving community. Both of them were dedicated in this sanctuary with a rose ceremony, which was very meaningful for me because it acknowledged our family's presence and belonging in this congregation and the community's commitment to helping our children thrive. Since then, we've all been busy in the religious education program. Rose and Nathaniel attend RE regularly, and Jamie and I both teach in the RE program. Our religious education program is fantastic. I can't say enough good things about it. Both children learn how to articulate and act out their values in the world, and this ability strengthens through the curriculum as children get older. Equally important for us is that our children's learning and being connected to their faith is done alongside building really important friendships with other children in the fellowship that I think are going to continue for hopefully as long as they live. There are many other reasons I love this fellowship, including my own religious growth and all the wonderful people I've met on the committees that I've been on. But I am officially out of time because they gave me a short window. So I would like to end with this. Jamie and I support this fellowship financially because we believe in the mission of UUFSB, its commitment to social justice, and its nurturing of the next generation. And speaking of the next generation, this year for the first time, children are being encouraged to pledge, and we just received our first pledge today from a child. So I hope you consider contributing as well.
Thank you, Amy. We will now begin our service with the sounding of the morning bell. Please breathe, center yourself, and remain silent until the sound can no longer be heard. I've asked Elise Paris to light our chalice this morning. As she does this, I'll be reading the words by Nadine McSpadden. During our darkest moments, still there is hope. When facing our biggest challenges, still there is hope. When all we can do is put one foot in front of the other, still there is hope. When we can't find the way out, still there is hope. When all we can do is help hold someone's hand as they cry, still there is hope. We are the hope for ourselves and for one another. Always there is hope. Deb will now provide us with a time for all ages.
Spacing issues. Good morning, beloveds. I'm Deb Little. I serve this congregation as the Director of Religious Education. I'm very delighted to see that you all made it with an hour less sleep. That's very impressive. I want to begin with a reminder about our traveling chalice. The sign-up sheet is in the foyer every Sunday, and it's not just for the kids. So, for example, this week I invite Maria Cecilia to come up and get the chalice. She will take it home this week and bring it back next week, so sign up. She's going to come up. Just hand it to her when she comes up. Thanks. This is the second time Maria Cecilia is taking home the chalice, so I'm sure she can share her experience with you from the last time. And I apologize, but I actually have a second announcement because we hate to hit the WAs with things at the last minute. So this year, for the first time in 3 or 4 years, our youth are going on Midnight Run. Those of you who've been here for many years know that Midnight Run is a program to help houseless people in New York City. And on a night, our youth go in and they have designated stop points and they distribute clothing, toiletries, and food. So obviously, this is where you all come in for part of that. And at the end of service, Wendy Engelhart, holding her hand up, will be at a table. So please stop by and find out how you can help and contribute to this really important project that actually has a very lasting impression on our youth. Okay, now the story. Our Tale for All Ages was written by Trudy Ludwig, and it's called The Invisible Boy. And my font is small. There we go. Okay. It's Monday morning, and a row of kids stand behind the teacher, Mrs. Carlotti. They're waiting to enter the classroom. Well, they don't exactly stand. Some are dancing around, some are jumping up and down, some are whispering and shoving each other. But can you see Brian, the invisible boy? Brian's at the front of the line, right next to the teacher. He's very still. He seems to be almost ghostly, and he's drawn in black and white, while all the other children kind of pop in color. Even Mrs. Carlotti has trouble seeing Brian in her classroom. She's too busy dealing with Nathan and Sophie. Nathan has problems with what she calls volume control. He uses his outside voice when he should use his inside voice. Sophie is a whiner, and she just complains when she doesn't get her way. So Nathan and Sophie take up a lot of space in the classroom, and Brian takes up virtually no space. When the bell rings for recess, Micah and JT take turns choosing kids for the kickball teams. The best players get picked first. I think we've all been there on those playgrounds waiting to be chosen. Then the best friends of the best players, then the friends of the best friends. And at the end, only Brian is left, waiting and hoping to be chosen. JT glances at him and looks away very quickly. We've got enough players for each team, he says. Let's play ball. And Brian very sadly slinks away. In the cafeteria at lunch, Madison and her friends talk about her birthday party. The rope swing over the pool was awesome. Yeah, so was the water slide. I'm so glad you guys had fun, says Madison. And everyone did, except Brian, who wasn't invited. At choosing time in class, while the other kids play board games and read, Brian sits at his table doing what he loves to do best. He draws. Fire-breathing dragons, scaling tall buildings, space aliens locked in intergalactic battles, greedy pirates digging for treasure, and superheroes with the power to make friends wherever they go. The next Monday, Mrs. Carlotti introduces Justin, a new student, to the class, and Brian smiles shyly at him. Some of the other kids sneak looks at him. Is he cool enough to be with us? At lunchtime, Madison and JT watch Justin eat with chopsticks. What's that? Asks Madison as she points at Justin's food. It's bulgogi. It's Korean barbecued beef. My grandma made it for me. Do you want to try some? Ooh, says another boy. There's no way I would eat boogergy. And the kids laugh. All of them except Brian, who is sitting alone at another table. Which is worse, he wonders, to be laughed at or to be invisible? The next day, when Justin goes to his cubby to put away his backpack, he notices a piece of paper with his name on it. There's a drawing of a boy with chopsticks and a bowl of bulgogi. The note says, quote, Justin, I thought the bulgogi looked good. Brian. At morning recess, Brian finds a piece of chalk on the ground and starts drawing a crocodile. Justin stops to look. You're Brian, right? Yeah, thanks for the note. Emilio calls Justin over to play tetherball. "Sorry, I gotta go," Justin says. "By the way, that's a really cool drawing." Back in class, Mrs. Carlotti asks the kids to team up in twos or threes for a special project. The kids scurry around to pair up, and Brian heads for Justin. "I'm already with Justin," says Emilio. "Find someone else." Brian looks at the floor, wanting to disappear. But Justin says, "Mrs. Carlotti said we could have up to 3 people on our group. Come on, Emilio, let him work with us." "Okay," Amelia says reluctantly. So Mrs. Carlotti gives the class directions, and she shows them a picture of 4 sets of row houses in different colors, different designs, very colorful. "Your assignment," she says, "is to work together to write a story about what you see in this picture." "Whoa, cool," says Emilio. "What kind of people do you think would live in houses like that?" "I don't know, but I bet Brian could draw them to go with our story," says Justin. Brian smiles and takes out his lucky pen. The boys work together and then present their project. The narrator of the project, wearing a pirate mask, says, "Hi, I'm the narrator. And if you're wondering why a pirate got the part of a narrator, I'll tell you, it's all in the agent." Well, now on with the tale. The crooked story we made up on the spot, and the boys held up several pictures. A dragon breathed fire out of the top window of one of the houses. A dinosaur walked by in the rain, and a shark swam in a lake in front of the apartments. Then it's lunchtime again, which Brian dreads. But, "Brian!" he hears someone shout. "Hey, Brian, over here!" Brian turns and sees Justin waving him over. Emilio nods at Brian as he makes room for him at the table. Maybe, just maybe, Brian's not so invisible after all. Amen. Now I invite you all to join in singing the children out for worship. And could my teachers stand up so the kids know who to follow? There we go. So kids, go back with Amy and Michelle to your class and we'll sing the Reeb benediction, which is at the end of every hymnal.
Wow. Thank you, choir, and Dan. Our opening words are by Maureen Killeran. Welcome, you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or who have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here you may find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, you may find community for your struggles. People with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and changes of our day. Please stand as you are willing and able and join in singing hymn number 127, Can I See Another's Woe? Thank you, Bethany. It is our spiritual practice to have a meditation in three ways: in words, in silence, and in music. Following the reading, we will have a minute of silence, followed by hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. You may wish to open your hymnal to that page at this time. Our words for meditation are from Tandeka, and this is titled The Legacy of Caring. The Reverend Dr. Thandeka is a UU minister and is the founder and CEO of Love Beyond Belief, a nonprofit organization which works to bring about spiritual vitality and renewal in religious organizations and spiritual but non-religious organizations through a small group, Universal Connections, workshops, consultations, and programs. The Legacy of Caring. Despair is my private pain, born from what I have failed to say, failed to do, failed to overcome. Be still, my inner self. Let me rise to you. Let me reach down into your pain and soothe you. I turn to you to renew my life. I turn to the world, the streets of the city, the worn tapestries of brokerage firms, drug dealers, private estates, personal things in the bag lady's cart. Rage and pain in the faces that turn from me, afraid of their own inner worlds. The common world I love anew, as the lifeblood of generations who refused to surrender their humanity in an inhumane world, courses through my veins. From within this world, my despair is transformed into hope, and I begin anew the legacy of caring. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Meryl Cassidy. Meryl is the Executive Director of Response Crisis Center, the co-chair of the Suicide Prevention Coalition of Long Island, and an assistant professor at Suffolk County Community College in the Human Services Program. She has been a professional social worker for over 30 years and has worked in a variety of settings and with diverse populations. For the past 10 years of her career, she has focused primarily on crisis intervention and suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. In addition to managing the operations of Suffolk County's only 24/7 crisis center devoted to suicide prevention, she provides professional trainings for human services professionals and community members on a broad range of topics, including crisis theory, communication and listening skills, suicide risk assessment, and safety planning, as well as being a certified trainer of the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training Curriculum, or ASSIST. She's also a Sources of Strength trainer and Lifeline's postvention trainer. She is co-chair of the Mental Health Subcommittee for the Suffolk County Division of Community Mental Hygiene and a board member of NASCOD, the National Association of Crisis Organization Directors. In 2015, she received the Excellence in Suicide Prevention Award from the Suicide Prevention Center of New York State. And in 2016, she received the Making the Mission Award from NASCOD. She will speak about her work at Response and on the planning and implementation of the 3-digit crisis intervention or crisis and suicide prevention lifeline. Meryl?
Good morning, everyone. It's been such an honor to, you guys can hear me, right? To be here this morning with you all. I really wanted to give several standing ovations. Closer to the mic? Okay. We're going to wait while Dan gets the PowerPoint up, but what Mike didn't say, there it is. What Mike didn't say is he nominated me for that award in 2015. So we have a mutual admiration thing going on. So Mike asked me to come here this morning, and I'm really grateful that he did, even though, you know, we all went through losing an hour of sleep, and even after all these years, public speaking still causes me quite a bit of stress. It's my pleasure to be here. I always enjoy an opportunity to talk about Response Crisis Center because I think it also helps to diminish the stigma surrounding mental health issues and suicide, which is a big part of our mission at Response. And I think one of the ways we do that is by talking honestly and openly about it. So I am so glad you asked me about Response. So Dan, do you want to go to the next slide? So I want to talk to you today about why our work at Response is important, how we make an impact in the community, what we do, and as Mike said, I want to tell you a little bit about 988, but then I want to end with what you can do, what we all can do to help each other. Everything starts with our mission and our vision. Our mission, we're just going to roll through these slides, Dan, we can keep going. Our mission really describes our philosophy and a lot about the crisis counseling process. So our mission at Response is to provide people in crisis or in need of emotional support with unconditional acceptance and compassion and respect in order really to lower anxiety and help the person figure out their own best next steps, help to facilitate a process where the person's own coping skills can reemerge. We're not really looking to, it's not an advice line. We're not guiding people to a conclusion. We're working with people collaboratively and with respect. Our vision, though, is a lot more aspirational. So when you think about what might lead someone to think about suicide, for example, and what we hear on the lines every day is a feeling of disconnection. You know, the story you heard of Brian not feeling invisible, you know, not feeling part of anything, feeling that somehow they've lost meaning in life, that their life doesn't matter. So that's really what our vision is. Our vision is to help people feel connected and cared for, and that they know that their life matters, and hopefully that their life is worth living. That may sound like kind of a grand vision, but that's what a vision statement is. It's aspirational, and if we lived in a world where people really felt that way, gee whiz, maybe I'd be out of a job, and that wouldn't be such a bad thing. Next slide. We have a lot of different programs at Response, and those of you who know Response, we've been around for 51 years. I know Linda Kirk is in the audience. She was on our board for many of those years. But we've had a lot of changes over the past 3. We were a very big part of the rollout of 988, which I'll talk about in a second. But we are, you know, our local crisis hotline, 631-751-7500, has been around for almost 52 years now. Our partnership with the Lifeline is that we're the premier 988 center for Suffolk, Putnam, and Rockland counties, and we back up 5 other counties in New York State. But we're also a national backup for 988. So when a call, chat, or text comes into 988, if the local crisis center is busy and can't pick it up, it rolls to the backup. And so we have a lot of different lines of business. We have a very busy crisis center. We also have a lot of partnerships, and we do a lot of community education and training. You can go to the next slide. So I'm so glad you asked who benefits from our work. And when you think about it, and that's on the next slide, all people in crisis benefit from our work. And what's kind of amazing about that is that, and the whole idea of having a crisis hotline as a resource, is that any person, right, any age, any background, any socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, going through any type of life crisis at any moment, 24/7, 365. So no barriers, right? You can pick up that phone, you can text, you can chat. You don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to pay, although we know that, you know, you're paying for your phone bill. And, you know, there's really the idea of this is barrier-free access to care in the moment when you need it, because if you have an opportunity to meet somebody where they're at in the moment of crisis, you have an opportunity to de-escalate that crisis. And people really need that kind of support when they're in a crisis. They need it immediately in that moment. So that's the idea of a crisis hotline. The next slide kind of shows you that there are just many, many reasons why people might call a crisis hotline. It's not just about suicide. There are a lot of things that go on in a person's life that could cause a crisis, and they percolate and they bubble up, and, you know, we are complicated, us humans, and so it's usually never just one thing. There could be many things snowballing to kind of get you to a place where you need to pick up that phone. And for many people, for whatever reason, they don't feel like they can go to their family members or friends. Some people say they don't want to burden their family member. They know their family member is going through a lot. So there's this feeling that I am a burden and I don't want to burden others. That's one reason. And also people really like the anonymity and the lack of judgment that they receive from a compassionate crisis counselor who doesn't know them, right? There's no history there. There's no judgment. About 40% of the total calls, chats, and texts that come in are related to suicide. The rest really span the gamut of human experience. So just some of the reasons. And then when we look at suicide in particular, and Mike, don't tell the Living Works people that I stole this, but this is a slide. Well, they didn't invent the iceberg as a metaphor for public health issues. And suicide is a global public health issue. And we have particular expertise, and our counselors get quite a lot of training on being able to have conversations with people about suicide. And that doesn't happen in everyday life all the time. But you know, when you call 988 or when you call our local crisis hotline, you can be assured that you can have a conversation about this, and it's going to be a safe space for you to have such a conversation. And we're not only concerned about the number of deaths to suicide every year, which, if any of you are familiar with the most recent CDC report, because the 2021 data just came out, for the first time in 3 years, there was a 4% increase in the suicide rates, and sadly, a lot of that has to do with marginalized communities and young folks. But we're concerned about people impacted by suicide, which are the people under the iceberg, people who've had losses to suicide, or people who've attempted and survived. And then there are 1 in 20 people have thoughts of suicide at some point during their life. So it's you know, a widespread issue that we need to be able to talk about. Sorry, Dan. Yeah, now you can go to the next slide. This is a very condensed timeline of some of our history, and what I just want to focus in on is that last piece there. So in July of 2022, 988 was implemented, and this really has been our focus for the last 3 years, was working on implementing 988. So you can go to the next slide. For those of you unfamiliar, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has been in existence since 2005. It was always a 10-digit number, 1-800-273-TALK. And if you called it, you would get routed to a local crisis center. And there are about 200 of us around the country. Well, in July of 2022, that changed to a 3-digit dialing code, 988. So, and you can press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. You can still do that. So if you go to the next slide, you know, why did we need a national lifeline? Well, looking at the suicide rate from 1999 to when the lifeline was born, it had gone up 30% during that time. It was also just acknowledged that many people have mental health struggles, and you know, whether it's a diagnosed mental health condition or whether it's just what I would call a shadow syndrome, you have a little bit of this or a little bit of that, or whether you just love someone who's having a mental health struggle, or you're not diagnosed with anything, but you're just having a rough day. People have mental health struggles, 1 in 5 people above the age of 12. And this other data point really drove the idea for a national lifeline, which was that for every 1 person that dies by suicide, there are over 300 people who seriously think about it. So again, it's not just the prevention of suicide, which is very, very important. It's if we're really looking at, you know, systemically, what do we need to put in place to help people struggling writ large? You know, what do we need? How do we address this issue? So a national lifeline was born. Going to the next slide, and that just, you know, I think it's important for you to know that because 988 was not something necessarily new. It took the old lifeline and it turned it into a 3-digit dialing code, and it's the vision of it is that it's a national portal for people who want to connect to localized services. Again, there's over 200 centers nationally, and we function as a network. The reality of 988, which is described in the next slide, is greater access to care. And it's also the idea that somebody struggling with a mental health issue should have a mental health response. They shouldn't have the police show up at their door. And that is really one of the driving forces for 988, is to divert people who need a mental health response from having to call 911. And do we need a lot more than just having a place to call? Yes, I'll get into that in a moment. But the idea of having an easy to remember 3-digit code that people can call when they're having a mental health crisis was really a critical first step of the vision of 988. And the next slide goes a little deeper into that. It really was and is and remains a transformational moment. For example, at Response Crisis Center, we used to be, a really small local crisis center, and now, we're not so small. I was talking to Linda, our former board member, about some of the changes we've undergone. We're in a new building. We have about 6 times the number of paid staff, and we have a national presence. And that was because with 988 came a lot of funding. And so having a really well-resourced crisis services continuum is part of the vision of 988. We want to help end the stigma for those seeking and accessing mental health care. We want to reduce use of law enforcement. You really don't need a police officer, and police definitely do wonderful work, but when it comes to responding to mental health crises, it can often re-traumatize, escalate the situation, and end in the person not getting the treatment that they need. It was also an effort to meet the growing need for crisis intervention at scale and reduce healthcare spending, because as you'll see as we go forward, what do we got there? Yeah, we can keep going, keep scrolling through. Keep going because I'm running out of time. The short-term goal of 988 was to strengthen, the existing system. The long-term goal is to strengthen the whole continuum. Here we go. Think of it in terms of 3 pillars. You need someone to call. That's where we come in, who's going to answer your call 24/7, and you really need a lot of staff to be able to do that work, and so we have that staff, and we're answering about 97% of the calls that come in. You need someone to respond. You need a mobile crisis team that can go out and respond. And by 2025, the goal is to have that system fully funded. And you need some place to go. You need places like crisis stabilization centers, crisis residential, crisis respite centers. So you need, and by 2027, the goal is to have that fully funded. So you need the full gamut of services. But as the next slide demonstrates, 988 is not the 911 of mental health. That caused a lot of confusion. A lot of people were putting that out there into the community. It is not. 911 is a dispatch service. 988 is an intervention service. You call, you speak with a compassionate counselor. We are not sending the police. We are collaborating with you to figure stuff out. Keep going through the slides. So, obviously, when do you call 911? When you need fire, police, or medical emergency. When you're having a fire emergency, police emergency, or medical emergency, you call 911. When you're having an urgent mental health crisis, you're emotionally overwhelmed, or a suicidal crisis, you call 988. And over 95% of the calls that come into the 988 system are stabilized in the moment without any need for downstream referral. We're going to go through the next couple of slides until we get to this cool infographic. Keep going, Dan. Yep, keep going. Yep, this is a cool infographic to just reinforce what I said about 95% of things getting resolved on the phone. So a lot of people are surprised by that. They think of, you call a crisis hotline and we're just going to talk to you for a minute and then refer you on. But no, we have counselors and they're talking to you. They're trying to de-escalate. They're trying to work with you on a plan to stay safe, or just a coping plan. And that's what happens when you call. Keep going. And the next slide goes into that a little further. What's going to happen when you call? You're going to talk to a trained, caring, compassionate counselor. They're going to listen to your story. Would we all agree everybody's got a story to tell? And often, just needing to have your story heard and validated does so much good. And from a lot of what you guys were talking about this morning, the ability to provide that level of compassionate support, to shoulder that burden of pain for a while, hold space with people when they're in so much pain, does a lot of good. But we're also going to do some safety assessment. We're going to try to figure out, what's the level of risk in the moment and help you get from point A to point B. So now that you know all about response and 988, just wanted to end with a couple of thoughts about what can we do. And that's kind of the next slide. There's a brilliant campaign on the Lifeline's website called Be the One Too. A lot of people agree that suicide prevention is important, but a lot of people don't kind of know what that means, how to operationalize that. What can I do to help? Well, one thing you can do is if you know someone who's struggling, you can be the one to ask. You can be the one to ask, Ask them, are you okay? I'm concerned about you. You don't seem yourself lately. Just wondering, you having any thoughts of suicide? If you think they're thinking about suicide, ask about suicide. If you're one of those people that feel like you might be doing harm by saying those words, it's just not true. It's a really, really important thing to be able to say the word out loud and speak about it openly and honestly. So be the one to ask. You can be the one to be there. What does it mean to really be there, right? To really be there. Shut off your phone, shut off your computer, and be there. Be a presence. Cry, sit next to, hold hands with, help carry that burden, really be there. And then there are ways you can be the one to keep the person safe, help them connect with resources, and follow up. You can look at our website. We have a great page that says how to help a friend. Also on the red wallet cards, we've got those data points there too about how you can help someone. How else can you help someone? You can create a safety plan. That's the next. So I provided a worksheet. It's somewhere in the room. If any of you want to pick it up, there are a lot of good ones out there. This one, for those of you who have young people in your life, I do a lot of work with young people. There's a great website called Your Life, Your Voice, created by Boys Town, and this came from their site. I really like it. It's colorful. It's a collaborative worksheet you can do with kids. But I also think we should all have a safety plan or a coping plan. You know who you can talk to, know what your coping skills are, know your go-to ways of getting through tough times. So we have that for you. Mike said I'm a Sources of Strength trainer. I love to kind of remind you guys that we all have our own sources of strength. We're all works in progress. Maybe there are things on this wheel that you're doing really well and, you commit to every day. And then maybe there are other things that you need to build in terms of your toolbox of committing to your own mental health and wellness every day. And that's what the Sources of Strength wheel is all about. And then finally, I have shared with you a list of 99 coping skills. That's our last slide. And this comes from the Your Life, Your Voice website. I don't like self-care gurus who just say, you just got to do better with your self-care, and then it starts to become like, okay, there's a list of things. But you'd be surprised, kids really like this list because they can look at this list and they can say, okay, I can go jump on the trampoline. I didn't realize that was a coping skill. I can do that. And the idea here is that there's an endless array of coping skills that we have available to us on any given day, and having a curious mind, having an open attitude to learning a new coping skill every day is something we can commit to. Trying a new thing. If the old ways of coping aren't working for you, well, the only thing you really can do is try a new thing. You can't just keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Don't they call that the definition of, anyway. So I offer this to you to think about. And finally, just the last slide is a reminder to please take care of yourself and each other. This is such a wonderful community. It's been my privilege, really, to spend time with you this morning. I felt so uplifted and inspired being with you all today. So thank you.
Thank you, Meryl. I love Meryl. working with you is such an honor. There we go. Okay. Each Sunday, we share our plate offerings with an organization that does work in the world aligned with our principles. This is a spiritual practice, and this month's recipient is Sepa Mujer. Located here in Brookhaven Town, Sepa Mujer addresses problems of gender inequality, sexual harassment in the workplace, domestic violence, and unfair immigration practices. The organization offers intensive leadership trainings for Latino women. They also have a legal assistance program to provide representation to immigrant victims of crime, most often sexual assault or domestic violence. They run support groups for women and provide case management services. They have created a program for young women aged 14 to 20 called Girls Act. Through support, tutoring, and internships, it encourages girls to continue their education and improve their job skills. Please give generously to this worthy organization. Will the board members please come forward now and take the offering? I was abandoned, I was lonely, surrounded by a crowd that felt like an only. I wanted to die, wanted this to be over, carrying tales of heartache on my shoulders. Passing moment, or is it forever? Unraveling like the threads of a worn-out sweater. Undeserving of the gifts I've been given. Desperately trying to find a life worth living. And when the world is the world around me, carrying on like nothing's wrong. How did my mind go and find all the reasons that I don't belong? Why in the midst of this pain that I'm holding, why scared of holding on? I'm finding hope in a new day. I'm not claiming all is better. Seasons change and you can't stop the weather. I'm showing up in a new way, unashamed and unafraid to say, whether skies are blue or black or gray, I'll find hope in a new day. Taking some time, it won't be easy. What I thought would make me happy just don't please me. I have been blessed by the kindness of strangers, keeping my mind from its self-afflicted dangers. Brothers and sisters and children, and family too, holding the best lifted me up when only my best won't do. Letting the grace and forgiveness work its way through. I'm finding hope in a new day. I'm not claiming all is better. The seasons change and you can't stop the weather. I'm showing up in a new way, unashamed and unafraid to say, whether skies are blue or black or gray, I'll find hope in a new day. When there are highs in life, stay humble. When there are lows in life, stay hopeful. Take these lessons and pass them down just the same, making meaning from your pain. Sorry, Dan. I'm not claiming all is better. The seasons change and you can't stop the weather. I'm showing up in a new way, unashamed and unafraid to say, whether skies are blue or black or gray, I'll find hope in a new day. To the work of our faith, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings. Amen. Thank you. I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Our closing words today are by Jan Carl Campy. One day you will see that it all has finally come together. What you have always wished for has finally come to be. You will look back and laugh at what has passed, and you will ask yourself, how did I get through all of that? Just never let go of hope. Just never quit dreaming, and never let love depart from your life. We extinguish our chalice flame, for our worship has ended and our service begins. Our words for benediction are by Robin F. Gray. As we prepare to depart, we give voice to these hopes. May we know ourselves bound in community, even while we are apart. May a passion for justice burn in our lives. May we carry the light of compassion in our hearts and in our every interaction. May we be whole in our devotion to truth and always carry the lamp of peace before us. Amen.
Rocks are ancient, mountains high, oceans great. Winds are restless, trees are patient, and you, my child, are awake. Waves are crashing, rivers churning, planets twirling, stars ablaze. Storms are raging, atoms whirling, and you, my child, are awake. To perceive these wondrous things, count the beat of a blackbird's wings, to tell a story and dance and sing. All the splendors of creation are very happy that you came, because they needed someone to see them, and you, my child, are awake. To perceive Weeds are hopeful, dewdrops fleeting. Oaks are crooked and redwoods straight. They are not known to the sleeping, but you, my child, are awake. You, my child, are awake. You, my child.
Our service has ended. Go in peace.